We spoke about, the kind of the general outline of where it might go, not the specifics of what, each story. It might go, not the specifics, or not the specifics, or not the specifics.
Had a 27th season of Doctor Who been made, there was still a big question mark over who exactly would have been the programme's script editor.
So that's one of the reasons I'd gone to see Ghostlight in the studio. I remember Andrew introduced me to Sylvester as his possible successor.
What changes would have been made, and what plans were in store for the series?
If J&T had carried on for another year, then almost certainly we would have carried on what Andrew had set up and developed from there. Had there been a new producer, then a new producer would have had his or her own ideas, and it's inevitable that would mean some changes.
Then if John had gone, and we'd done the fourth season, I would have done the fourth season. But then I would doubt if I would have done a fifth season, not from my point of view. But what tends to happen with Doctor Who, and with lots of programmes like this, when a new producer arrives, he wants to put his stamp on it. And if a new producer had arrived, he might have maybe gone on for another season or 2 seasons with me, but he would eventually want to get his own Doctor. It's perfectly natural, perfectly understandable.
You have to understand that at that point, season 27 was a series of scenes we'd like to see. Ideas like, let's do historicals because the BBC are good at historicals.
Andrew had ideas. Ben certainly had ideas. Ben always has ideas. And yeah, we had been bouncing ideas around. What if we did this? What if we did that? There was a very, very good communication line between the writers, the script editors, and some of the design staff. And certainly the likes of Ben and Andrew were very keen to find out if we wrote a story of a particular type, is that something that we can achieve on the budget available?
But nothing was absolutely nailed down. But certainly Ben, Mark and Briggsy, that would have been a good opening line for the show, the first 3 stories. But nothing was absolutely nailed down. But nothing was absolutely nailed down. But nothing was absolutely nailed down. But nothing was absolutely nailed down.
Or not the specifics. Or not the specifics.
Possible.
There was going to be a Doctor Who stage play, and I was offered the chance to write it. I wanted to co-write it with Ben because Ben was the best Doctor Who writer I've been working with. Here's the opening, as I remember it, for Ben's story. It's like the classic Star Wars shot of this huge, BBC budget and the special effects landing this huge, great spaceship, and it goes on for kilometres and kilometres and kilometres, and then we see the command deck, we see the bridge, and it's all bustling. It's like the Starship Enterprise, but probably not as grand.
And you would swing round and there would be Ace in uniform sitting in the captain's chair, and she would say, like, all power, speed, set a course for such and such a place, and off the ship would go, and she'd go, if anyone needs me, I'm in my cabin. And she'd very militarily get up, stand, walk out, walk down the corridor, go into her cabin.
When she seals the door behind her, and in the room is the TARDIS, and sitting in the chair, turning around, classic Donald Pleasance, James Bond villain style, it's the Doctor. And Ace just says,
"This is not going to work." And that was another scene we'd like to see.
Now, I don't know where it goes from there, but in a way it doesn't matter because it's such a great opening and it's such a classic Ben stuff. And you begin to write the story in your mind from that point on.
But we probably wouldn't have done that because we'd realised that we would have got a really crappy bridge. It would have just looked really bad, and the uniforms would have looked really bad, and all the technology would have just looked really bad. And we just thought don't want to do that again. So we probably would have done a historical of some kind. But we probably wouldn't have done that.
I think one of the other writers we would have been bound to use again, not because we were obliged to, just because he was so damn good at it, would have been Mark Platt.
I think it would probably have been a good idea for me to go halfway through the following season. And I do believe there were plans afoot. Andrew Cartmel and Ben Aronovich and Mark Platt had got their heads together about the future of Ace. because they weren't going to let her kind of just filter away and die into nothing. And apparently they'd agreed that she was going to go to Gallifrey and train to become a Time Lord.
Thoughts turned to her replacement.
What we intended to do was we intended to bring in a new companion. That was one of the chief things that we were mapped out to do. And Ben and I had developed this new companion.
We thought, right, we want someone who's different from Ace, but has got the same kind of competences.
She was going to be different to Sophie. She was going to be more aristocratic, and she was going to be an aristocratic cat burglar.
She was more interested in safe cracking and gangsterism than she was in being a member of the upper class. And you would meet her at a garden party. So it'd be a very elegant garden party with lots of, upper class twits and people eating sandwiches with their fingers in the air. And she would walk across the lawn, and there would be this garden party. She'd go into the house.
She goes upstairs, and she just appears to be like a Deb or something like that, just a beautiful aristocratic girl. And she goes into this room, and she takes a painting off the wall, and there's this great big wall safe there. And she peels off her gloves, and she's a safe cracker. She's a cat burglar. She cracks the safe, and she opens the safe.
And inside would be Sylvester. And he'd look up and he'd go, "What took you so long?" And that would be your introduction to the new companion. And we had no idea what the plot of the story was beyond her opening the safe. And we had no idea what the plot of the story was. And we had no idea what the plot of the story was. And we had no idea what the plot of the story was.
Beyond these plans for season 27, Andrew Cartmel was thinking even further ahead for the series.
I don't so much have stories in mind as writers that I wanted to work with. A writer called Ed Young, there was Robin Mukherjee, Tony Etchells, or Charles Vincent. Would have loved to have worked with Rona again, although there's no talk about that. And Stephen Wyatt. So it was this cluster of writers that I was looking at, and I think what I would have liked to do ideally was commission somebody entirely new. And
I'd submitted with Rob Perry, my writing partner, a Doctor Who story outline under a pseudonym. And our second attempt was a storyline for a show called Illegal Alien, featuring the Cybermen in Blitz-torn London. That was submitted, again, through this very informal system, but was intercepted by Ben Aronovich. And Ben pointed out that given that Andrew was in the throes of script editing Ian Briggs's Fenric script that was also World War II, it wouldn't be very wise to put another World War II script in front of him because it was going to muddy the waters. So Ben said, "I'll hang on to this, and when we finish this season, I'll show it to Andrew and see if we can progress it."
So I had in my head only 3 years. Peter had only done 3 years. So when it came up to the third year, I was thinking, oh, well, that's it. Maybe I should only do 3 years. The great Patrick Troughton said, only do 3 years. And then, it was the second year, yes, and JNT approached me and said, look, we'd like you to stay on and do a fourth year. And I said, and I kind of hummed and hawed. And he said, well, listen, if you don't, we won't do a third year. I said, oh, gosh, well, I'll better then. So
it was rumoured that if the show had come back, it might have had a new theme tune even at that time, because John had been changing the theme tune arrangement on a fairly regular basis. I would have loved to have had a crack at it, of course. Whether it would have come to me or not, I don't know. It was rumoured. It was rumoured. It was rumoured.
My redesign of the TARDIS console room was actually done quite late. It wasn't contemporary with the end of the series. Those sketches were done about 1997. Hideously expensive thing had they actually gone to build for real. But it was just pushing the design just that little bit further to see what we could do.